The movie Little Women tells the story of three poor sisters who rely on each other to face the richest family in Korea. The story begins with the youngest sister coming home from school and her two older sisters buying her a cake to celebrate her birthday. In the past, the family was struggling and the two older sisters had to sacrifice a lot. Now that they have jobs, they make sure their younger sister doesn't have to go through the same hardships. While the three sisters are preparing food, their mother arrives home. She had just managed to get some ingredients to make kimchi, but In-ju, the eldest sister, scolds her saying that it's not worth it to beg for such a small amount. The four of them sit down to eat, and the two older sisters ask Oh In-hae what she wants for a birthday present, assuring her that money isn't a concern. In-hae, being innocent and carefree, says she wants to get a nose job to look like a noble. However, everyone advises her against it. Knowing that her sister wants to go on a European field trip with her school, In-ju and In-kyung have saved up some money for her. In-hae is overjoyed when she receives it, but their mother immediately complains that their father had an accident and she wants to go to the Philippines, implying that there's no money left. In-ju pulls out a list of all the debts their parents had accumulated and how they had been scammed many times. The youngest sister, understanding the situation, becomes gloomy and doesn't want to go anymore. In-hae had passed the entrance exam to the best art school in the country on her own, but their mother still didn't believe her and thought she got in because of their poverty. She refused to let her youngest daughter go on the field trip, arguing that her two older sisters hadn't gotten to go either. That night, In-hae confides in her sisters that she passed the exam without any special considerations and bursts into tears. The next morning, she wakes up to find that her mother had taken all the safe money to go to the Philippines and left a note behind. It turns out that the night before, while her daughters were asleep, she packed her bags and took the money. In-ju and In-kyung are furious, but seeing their youngest sister's sadness and her continued desire to go on the field trip, they decide to earn the money themselves. In-ju promises to earn half the money, and In-kyung promises the other half. At work, In-ju goes to her boss to ask for an advance on her salary, but she refuses and even insults her. Disheartened, In-ju seeks comfort from her close friend Jin Hwa-young. Both of them are outcasts on the 13th and 14th floors, so they have become friends. They talk about their lives and do some yoga together. Knowing that In-ju needs money, Hwa-young agrees to lend her the money to help her out. Meanwhile, In-kyung, a reporter at a television station, is being reprimanded for crying while hosting a program. She is under a lot of pressure and keeps using a liquid from a mouthwash bottle. Back at work, she is researching loan options for employees when she receives a call from her aunt. Her aunt tells her that In-kyung's mother has called and told her that she won't be returning to Korea and has entrusted her with the care of the three sisters. That night, In-ju and In-kyung talk about the differences between the lives of the rich and the poor. In-ju decides to marry a wealthy man to ensure that her younger sisters don't suffer anymore, even though she has been through a failed marriage with a con artist. In-hae, feeling dejected, stays in her room and draws. The next day, In-ju and Jin Hwa-young go for a walk and then to an expensive restaurant to eat. They discuss their lives and In-ju expresses her dream of having a beautiful house with all the amenities and not having to worry about money. Hwa-young smiles gently and transfers the money to In-ju. Earlier, Jin Hwa-young had mentioned an accounting job that would bring them wealth, so she brings a contract for In-ju to sign. After this, they will be rich. Meanwhile, In-kyung keeps her promise and goes to meet her aunt for breakfast. As soon as they arrive, they get into an argument, but In-kyung is determined not to get angry. Her aunt keeps talking about In-kyung's mother, but In-kyung doesn't want to hear it, so she changes the subject to money. Knowing that her niece has come to borrow money, the aunt straightforwardly asks how much she needs and for what purpose. In-kyung honestly says that she wants to send her sister on a field trip and needs 1.25 million won. She says she will pay it back when she receives her salary at the end of the month. The aunt says she doesn't need to be paid back, but instead, she needs In-kyung to come read the newspaper to her every week as a way of getting advice from a field reporter. After saying this, she sends In-kyung home without allowing her to even have breakfast. Finally, they had enough money for In-hae's trip, but she refused to take it, saying she had a prior engagement and left. In-ju chased after her and saw her getting into a luxurious car. In-ju quickly hailed a taxi to follow. At the television station, everyone was watching a replay of a program where Park Jae-sang was publicly apologizing to a person who had been wrongly imprisoned for 19 years. Park Jae-sang, who was running for mayor of Seoul, was making a big show of it. Knowing that Park Jae-sang used to be a lawyer for a bank, the manager asked In-kyung and Mary to investigate the case separately. Meanwhile, In-ju followed her little sister and saw her standing with a group of wealthy people and receiving an envelope. She rushed over to find out what was going on. It turned out that the woman, impressed by In-hai's artwork, had invited her to her house to paint with her daughter. The money in the envelope was for In-hai to take a taxi home. In-ju thanked the woman but refused the money and took her sister away. On the way home, In-ju scolded In-hai, telling her that they don't need help from wealthy people. If they keep taking their favors, people will think they are mooching off them. At the television station, In-kyung started her investigation. She carefully went through all the documents and evidence, making notes of important points on a small board. In-ju also received a file from Jin Hwa-young containing all the secrets of the 13th floor that she had gathered. In-ju was delighted, knowing that now if anyone from that team ever tried anything, she would have something to use against them. Just then, Choi Do-il returned to the office. After greeting In-ju, he asked her to leave because they were about to have a meeting. He also asked for her phone number in case he needed to contact her while Hwa-young was away. In-kyung, after gathering all the essential information, called the manager to present her findings. She also attended Park Jae-sang's press conference. After his presentation, it was time for reporters to ask questions. In-kyung was chosen, and due to her thorough research, she asked tough questions that made it difficult for Park Jae-sang to answer truthfully. This put him on his blacklist. After the press conference, In-kyung went to the restroom and continued drinking something. When she came out, she ran into Park Jae-sang and confronted him. Mary was standing nearby and recorded everything. Choi Do-il also went to the 13th floor to find In-ju and invited her to have dinner. He couldn't get in touch with Jin Hwa-young, so he asked In-ju to call her. The other female colleagues were annoyed to see In-ju getting special attention from their superior. Unable to reach Hwa-young, In-ju went to her apartment using the address in the message. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. She remembered the code that Hwa-young had given her and unlocked the door. She went inside and found no one, so she decided to feed the fish. As she turned around, she noticed something strange in the closet. She approached it and was horrified to discover that Hwa-young was hanging inside. Her funeral was held, and the news of Jin Hwa-young's death at her home was widely reported. Before her death, she had undergone plastic surgery and left a note saying that she wanted to start over with a completely new look. At the television station, Mary wanted to check In-kyung's blood alcohol content because she suspected she was drunk at work. The news from the press conference spread online when Park Jae-sang discovered that she had a faint scent of liquor on her breath. In-kyung refused to take the breathalyzer test. Mary found the bottle of mouthwash and tested it. It turned out that In-kyung was using a low-alcohol beverage, and she had many of these bottles hidden in her drawer. Because of her excessive alcohol use, she was called in for a meeting and suspended for 2 months. At the construction company, In-ju confronted the head of the department and exposed her scheme of embezzling company funds for personal gain, along with several others. She even posted her findings on the company's information page for everyone to see. While they were arguing, the company director came and called In-ju to his office for a meeting. During the meeting, In-ju learned that her sister had been embezzling money for the past 15 years while working at the company. The entire 70 billion won scandal in Europe was also orchestrated by Hwa-young. The director, seeing her close relationship with Jin, assumed In-ju was involved and wanted to force her to reveal the truth. In-ju, however, had no knowledge of the matter and believed her sister would never do such a thing. She resigned from her job and left the company. On her way home, she received a call from the Jay's Yoga studio saying that Jin Hwa-young had transferred her membership to In-ju and invited her to come practice whenever she had time. In-ju went to the studio and received her own personal locker key. She stood there for a while, lost in thought, before finally opening the locker. Inside, besides the workout clothes, there was a strange, heavy bag. When she opened it, she found a beautiful pair of shoes, some clothes, and a letter left for In-ju. The letter expressed a wish for In-ju to live in a beautiful apartment with big windows, along with her sisters, because she was so kind-hearted. She lifted the bag again and was stunned to discover it was full of money. Holding the stacks of cash in her hands, In-ju cried silently. That night, In-ju made kimchi noodles for her sisters to eat. She brought out a bottle of soju, planning to have some drinks together, but In-kyung told her about her suspension from the television station. Because she had been drinking while working, she was suspended, fearing she might become an alcoholic like their father. In-ju poured the soju out and reassured her sister, saying she would not follow the same path. Meanwhile, In-hai continued to visit the wealthy family to paint for their daughter, confiding in them about her family situation. After receiving the money, In-ju emptied the kimchi jar and filled it with the cash. Now that she had so much money, she didn't know what to spend it on. She went to a shop and bought a mountain of premium ice cream. While walking home, she thought to herself that if she had this much money, she would never have left. Could it be that Hwa-young wasn't really dead? In-kyung visited her aunt to talk about her suspension. They seemed to be close, but their conversations were always laced with subtle dissatisfaction towards each other. Knowing that In-kyung was temporarily suspended, her aunt suggested that she come work for her. There, In-kyung would learn how to become wealthy in Korea. The next day, In-ju met with the director and Choi Do-il to discuss the investigation into the 70 billion won. She didn't believe that her dear friend could have done such a thing, which is why she went to them. Before starting the investigation, In-ju had a few conditions. She refused to return to the company and wanted to transfer to the Orchid Association. She also demanded that they stop calling Hwa-young a thief, as she didn't like that term. Finally, she requested the director to respect Hwa-young until they found proof of her wrongdoing. After her meal with her aunt, In-kyung called Kim Cheol-seon to inquire about an email he had sent her 4 years ago regarding a private matter. She wanted to meet him to discuss it, but he abruptly ended the call. Just then, Jong-ho called down from upstairs, inviting In-kyung to join him. They made snacks together and reminisced about their childhood. It turned out that they had been neighbors and knew each other since they were young. Jong-ho's grandfather came downstairs, and the three of them enjoyed a meal together. Suddenly, In-kyung received a call. It was Kim Cheol-seon. He was calling from a public phone and gave In-kyung his address, asking her to come the next day to talk. Meanwhile, In-ju went with Choi Do-il to the house where Department Head Jin used to live to collect evidence. The house was filled with new items that hadn't even been unpacked. There was plenty to investigate. In-ju wanted to be alone, so she subtly sent Choi Do-il back. After he left, she recalled their past conversations and started searching for clues. She examined the luxury items and carefully recorded their prices. Looking through her phone photos, she remembered Hwa-young's mention of using a secondary account. She searched the web for clues from the photos and discovered her sister's secondary account. Calculating everything, In-ju suspected something shady was going on. At that moment, the director arrived and received a report on the investigation. However, the recorded amount was only 260 million won. A few items had been sold for cash, leaving a remaining 70 million won. The director didn't care about such a small sum. All he wanted was to find the 70 billion won. In-ju searched for images on Skygram and realized that the pictures on the secondary account weren't on her computer or phone. It appeared that they were taken in Singapore using a separate device. The director decided to go to Singapore to investigate and retrieve the Skygram link. He started scrutinizing In-ju's feet, making her uncomfortable. But when he saw an orchid, he was startled and quickly left. Early the next morning, Jong-ho drove In-kyung to the seafood market. On the way, they encountered a serious accident. However, they were in a hurry and didn't stop to check. At the seafood market, In-kyung tried to contact Kim Cheol-seon but couldn't reach him. Suspecting something had happened, she returned to the scene of the accident. Sure enough, the person in the crashed car was Kim Cheol-seon. Jong-ho found a blue orchid at the scene. In-ju, dressed beautifully, went to a shoe store to inquire about the pair of shoes that her sister had left her. She pretended to be drunk and couldn't remember who gave them to her, showing the photo of the director. The clerk confirmed that it was him, as he was the only customer who truly understood the brand's concept of balance from head to toe. In-ju then visited her former department head and learned shocking information about the relationship between Jin Hwa-young and director Shin. Overwhelmed by the revelation, she spent the evening drinking beer and rereading the department head's social media posts. She noticed something and rushed out. It turned out she went to see Choi Do-il and told him about her suspicions. She noticed that her sister had posted photos of almost every meal she had, except for the shoes, which were very expensive and had no receipt. Do-il suspected there was someone special, and In-ju revealed it was director Shin. They started talking about the missing 70 billion won from the Swiss bank and analyzed the situation together. They agreed that director Shin was having an affair with Jin Hua-young and was the culprit. He wanted to steal the entire 70 billion won and had eliminated department head Jin. In-ju took care of her orchids and then went to the neighborhood where her sister lived to check the security camera footage from 17 weeks ago. Strangely, the footage from that day was missing, while all the other days were normal. The car that usually parked there had its black box removed, but nothing else was missing. The next day, In-ju and Do-il sat down together to review documents and messages exchanged between the two of them. After reviewing them, they found a lot of evidence of director Shin's guilt. In-kyung went to the police station to look at the dashcam footage from the car accident, wanting to investigate further, but they told her to wait until the forensic lab completed its analysis. She changed clothes and attended Kim Kyeol-seong's funeral. His family seemed angry with her, but she didn't care and continued to pay her respects. After leaving, she left her business card with a message for the deceased's brother. Meanwhile, Choi Do-il and In-ju revisited news reports and looked into previous victims. They all died in similar ways, confirming that director Shin was responsible. In-ju wanted to report it to the police, but Do-il stopped her. If they did, the 70 billion won would disappear and be used for the government's slush fund. He was there to recover the money, not find a killer. In-ju was furious, but he said, "In this world, nothing is more sacred than money," leaving her speechless. On the way home, In-ju wondered what to do with the 2 billion won she received. She went on a shopping spree, buying everything she could. When she got home that night, In-kyung was shocked to see all the new things in the house. She also discovered that her sister had quit her job. They talked for a while, and In-ju went to get the mail. In-kyung saw In-hai's phone and read a message from her friend. When In-ju opened the mail, she found a pair of red shoes sent by the director. She was slightly shocked. At the International Youth Arts Festival, the chaebol's child won the grand prize, while In-hai was at school, sulking and sketching. In-kyung, on the bus, saw the winning artwork and remembered that it was her younger sister's work. In-ju went to confront director Shin. They argued from the office to the parking lot. He wasn't afraid and openly suggested driving to the prosecutor's office. Suddenly, the car lost its brakes and wouldn't stop. A blue orchid appeared in the car. The car, with its occupant, plummeted down the cliff. In-ju could only watch in disbelief. In-kyung brought her phone to her younger sister and asked about what had happened. In-hai had been promised a scholarship to study abroad by the wealthy family and had accepted the deal, despite her sister's objections. In-ju rushed down to check on the situation and called for an ambulance. In-kyung wanted to wait for In-hai to come home from school, but she told her sister to go back first because she had something to do. Asking In-hai's friends, In-kyung learned that there was a party at the wealthy family's house that day, and In-hai was probably there. In-kyung found the address and went to the house, but was stopped at the entrance and escorted out. When she called In-hai, she didn't answer, which made In-kyung so frustrated that she went to buy alcohol. At the party, the family promised to support In-hai well, making her very happy. At the hospital, Choi Do-il, who had found In-ju's phone at the scene, arrived and returned it to her, telling her that if anyone asked, she should say that he had come to hand over work and then left immediately. Do-il showed In-ju a video of Jin Hua-young withdrawing money from a bank. After investigation, he discovered that Hua-young had withdrawn 2 billion won in cash, but didn't know where it went. Her father didn't suspect anything because he had handed over all the documents for only 50 million won. She had no siblings, and her closest friend was In-ju. Fortunately for In-ju, director Shin was dead, and his crimes could be blamed on him. Meanwhile, In-kyung was drunk and climbed a ladder to reach the surveillance camera, calling out to her sister. Mary, her senior, filmed the whole scene. Seeing that her sister was calling so much, In-hai asked to go home because she was embarrassed. When she arrived home, she went straight to sleep. In-hai sent a message to her sister saying that she would block her and wouldn't contact her anymore because she was ashamed of herself today. In-ju went home and thought a lot about everything that had happened. The next day, she went to take care of her orchids as usual. She noticed that one of the orchids had bloomed. As she was reviewing information, she saw photos of the orchid with a message saying that when it bloomed, she should take it to Mr. Woo Sang-woo at the hospital. She remembered her sister's letter that mentioned the same thing, so she took the orchid and the bag of money and went to the hospital. In-kyung woke up, disgusted by the events of the previous night. She was reprimanded at the television station for damaging the station's reputation. In-ju went to the psychiatric hospital to see Director Woo. They sat down and talked like old friends. Trusting him because of Hua Yum's message, she told him about the 2 billion won her sister left her, but she didn't know what to do with it. Wu suggested that she spend it on her own needs. He then took out a ledger and handed it to Inju. They were talking when Choi Do-il arrived. They quickly packed their things and escaped through the back window. Do-il went inside to search for the ledger, suspecting that Wu had it. He found Inju's phone and rushed out to find her. She was waiting for a taxi and got into the car with Do-il. In the car, they talked, and he revealed that he knew everything about Inju's need for the ledger and the 2 billion won. She was surprised that he knew but didn't expose her. They discussed the ledger and agreed to work together to resolve the problem. In Kyung, feeling disheartened, went to see her friend, Jang Ho, who comforted her. He suggested that she try planting vegetables like him to relieve stress. Suddenly, she received a call from Kim Kyeol-seom's brother. They met at a coffee shop, and he gave In Kyung a USB drive. Back at home, she and Jang Ho watched the video. They discovered that the man in the video had sniffed something small and blew on his hand before he died. Meanwhile, Inju returned home, and her younger sister told her that she would be studying abroad with her friend next month. Her friend's family couldn't go, so In-hai would go there and take care of them. Inju was furious because she didn't want her sister to be a servant to others, but In-hai revealed her thoughts, and Inju couldn't say anything. In-kyung was still at her friend's house, enjoying a meal together. As they were about to clear the table, she noticed a blue orchid. Upon asking, she learned that Jeon-ho had picked it up at the scene of the accident. It seemed to be a rare orchid, and he even took a sniff. Remembering the video of the bank director, In-kyung compared the flower to it and realized it was the same kind, which surprised them both. The next day, In-ju went to see the wealthy lady to talk. She brought a stack of money to give her for her sister's education abroad, but the lady refused it. Instead, she showed In-ju some of In-hai's artwork that she had sent for assessment. Seeing what her younger sister had been through, In-ju was speechless and left. The lady then called someone and asked them to investigate why In-hai's sister suddenly had so much money and was wearing expensive shoes. In-ju went to the yoga studio to practice. As she was exercising, she thought about her childhood, when her family had to run away because her father went bankrupt. She remembered her younger brother's death and how she told her mother about it. She ran after her mother, crying, not understanding what had happened. Meanwhile, In-kyung and Jeon-ho, after researching the blue orchid, finally found its origin. That evening, In-kyung was putting away the kimchi when she discovered 2 kimchi containers filled with money. Her older sister had just arrived, and In-kyung immediately confronted her, saying she didn't want to use that money. If she insisted, In-kyung would call the police. In-ju, knowing that this day would come, remained calm. She told her sister about the past when their family had to flee. They actually had another younger sibling before In-hai, but he had died because they couldn't afford treatment. In-kyung had no memory of this sibling. In-ju thought she was telling In-hai, but it turned out that she wasn't. How did she know about it? After talking to In-kyung, In-ju went to see her aunt and asked her to buy a house. She explained the source of her money, but her aunt didn't care. In-ju revealed her mother's feelings, and her aunt agreed to help her find a house quickly so that her 2 younger sisters could live better. Meanwhile, In-hai couldn't sleep and wandered around the wealthy family's house. Park Jae-sang, noticing her vulnerability, used sweet words to lure her in. The next day, the aunt took In-ju to an apartment by the Han River that she had bought before. She was selling it to the 3 sisters, which made In-ju very happy. In-ju excitedly explored every corner of the house. Meanwhile, Hyo-rin wanted to see her friend's new home, so In-hai took her inside. Being from a wealthy family, she was amazed by the new and exciting things, making her happy and envious of her friend's loving sisters. The 2 girls talked from morning to evening. After the aunt left, In-ju called In-kyung to tell her about the new house. In-kyung wasn't happy that her sister was using money of unknown origin and refused to move in. In-kyung then visited the nurse who had cared for the bank director and showed her the video. After hearing the details, she asked about the blue orchid that the patient had sniffed. The nurse confirmed that it was the same kind and that lawyer Park Jae-sang had given it to the director. In-kyung went home and researched this type of orchid with her friend. They enthusiastically explored its characteristics and benefits. At the wealthy family's home, Hyo-rin had to do extra math exercises. Her mother took In-hai to a secret place, a giant blue orchid. Hyo-rin gifted In-hai a bloom and asked her to sniff it. After talking, In-hai agreed to paint a portrait for her. While painting, In-hai started feeling dizzy and sweating profusely. After a while, she fainted. In-ju, upon hearing about this, rushed to the hospital. She learned from the doctor that her sister had a hereditary heart condition and needed immediate surgery. In-kyung also arrived at the hospital to check on her. When she heard that In-ju planned to use the money for surgery, she agreed. She only cared about In-hai's life and no longer cared about the source of the money. The secretary rushed in to report the situation to Park Jae-sang. Choi Do-il was also there. It turned out he was on the same team, trying to find the missing 70 billion won. Park Jae-sang needed more influence to help him win the mayoral election. His wife arrived and told him that In-hai had a hereditary heart condition. He thought of an idea. Do-il, knowing about the situation, called In-ju and warned her not to touch the money for now because she was being watched. In-ju refused to listen, wanting to save her sister. She went to her locker to get the money, but the department head Go caught her in the act. The money was confiscated and taken to a house to be counted. In-ju didn't need much, only 100 million won for the surgery. Go laughed sarcastically. She offered to give the money if In-ju could withstand 10 punches. In-ju agreed. As Go punched her, she insulted her. Just when things were about to get worse, Choi Do-il arrived and stopped her. Go insisted on continuing, but the wealthy lady intervened and rescued In-ju. She then took In-ju to the restaurant where she had eaten with Hwa-young, bringing back old memories. It was the same table they sat at before. The lady revealed that she had paid for all the meals and bought the shoes, not Director Shin. She offered In-ju a job, and after some thought, In-ju accepted. She wouldn't be close to the lady but would work for her as an employee. At that moment, In-kyung called and said In-hai was having heart problems again. In-ju rushed back to the hospital to comfort her before surgery. Waiting outside, In-kyung asked about the money, and In-ju said not to worry but to stay calm. In the operating room, In-hai drifted in and out of consciousness and remembered her childhood when her mother carried her to find a doctor while the family was fleeing debt. The surgery was successful, and she woke up. In-hai immediately wanted to call her mother and tell her she felt like she was reborn. The aunt didn't know what to say, and the two sisters took the phone outside to talk. They demanded that their mother come back immediately to explain everything to their younger sister. Back in the hospital room, they found Park Jae-sang's family there filming a documentary. In-ju was unfazed, but In-kyung was furious. She was about to cause a scene, but In-ju stopped her and pulled her away, but In-kyung was still annoyed. She dragged her sister outside to ask about the money. She learned that the 2 billion won had been retrieved, and Park Jae-sang was the one who paid for the surgery. In-kyung was enraged, unable to accept this. Just as she was about to pay, she brought her aunt there, and the aunt paid for everything, leaving Park Jae-sang speechless. His plan was ruined. Meanwhile, Choi Do-il received news from a friend in Singapore that they had found 65 billion won. However, the account holder was not the same person Do-il had sent them to investigate. Checking the email, he was shocked to see who it was. At the hospital, In-hai was recovering. The three sisters were eating together when In-hai announced that she would be staying at Hyo-rin's house for a while to prepare for her studies abroad. The two older sisters weren't happy. In-hai also added that every time she felt pain, she heard a child's voice telling her to leave that house or else she would die. In-ju and In-kyung went to the cafeteria but couldn't eat because they felt that their younger sister was acting very strange. In-ju revealed that she had the ledger and wanted to make money from it to support the family and send In-hai abroad. In-kyung thought she could use it as evidence against Park Jae-sang, but her sister hit her on the head. In-kyung went to Jong-ho's house and contacted a foreigner to ask about the blue orchid and its properties. After talking for a while, he gave her the address of someone in Korea who knew a lot about this type of orchid. As she was writing down the address, she noticed it looked familiar. She checked her notebook and realized that it was the address that Kim Cheol-seon had given her. That evening, In-ju went to see Choi Do-il to talk about the ledger, but he told her to stop for now. He showed her pictures of assets in Singapore. They were all registered under In-ju's name, and she knew nothing about them. The people there were familiar with the name Oh In-ju. Before, Jin Hwa-young had transferred money using her own account and a Singaporean account in Oh In-ju's name. In-ju remembered signing the documents her friend had given her. Knowing this situation, she immediately wanted to go to Singapore, but if she went now, she would be immediately suspected. The current priority was to work for Hyo-rin's mother. Soon, there would be an orchid exhibition in Singapore, and the mother would be going there to launder money. In-ju needed to gain her trust so she could go along. That night, In-ju couldn't sleep and kept looking at the photos, remembering the time she and Hwa-young went to Singapore 4 years ago. They had walked around the same cafe and confided in each other. The next morning, In-ju decided to work for the wealthy lady. When the lady couldn't find her dress for the trip to Singapore, In-ju found it, impressing her a bit. The lady was in a hurry to get to the airport to attend a friend's grand opening in Singapore, so she instructed In-ju on the plane to take care of her daughter, give her medicine on time, and stay there to watch over her. That night, Park Jae-sang returned home and was furious to find his wife gone. He smashed the television. He called In-ju to his office and asked her about his wife. She told him that she was in Singapore for a grand opening. He printed out the photo, and Choi Do-il, who had just arrived, was sent to bring his wife back. After comforting Hae-rin, In-ju met with Choi Do-il. She couldn't believe how violent and strange this family was. He took her to a secluded place and explained his plan. Do-il had created a shell company under Oh In-ju's name. Once they got the 70 billion won, they would transfer it there. In-ju had to find a safe place to hide, and he would take the ledger and make a deal. In-ju wasn't entirely trusting of Do-il, but his plan was solid, and she hoped he was telling the truth. If he wanted to harm her, he wouldn't have gone through the trouble of protecting her until now. They agreed, and they decided to split the profits 60-40, 60 for In-ju and 40 for him. In-ju was happy and wanted to tell her sister that she would be moving to a beautiful place with a beach, but her sister was indifferent and walked away. That night, In-hae and Hyo-rin secretly went downstairs to talk. Meanwhile, In-kyung went with her aunt to the real estate company. As soon as she arrived, the aunt introduced her as the new director, surprising everyone, including Kyung. She thought she would be an intern, but her aunt promoted her to director. The two of them talked for a bit. The aunt wanted In-kyung to quit the television station and work there, but she hadn't decided yet. The secretary brought in a pile of documents, shocking Kyung, but she obediently sat down to examine them. Finally, Hyo-rin's mother returned. Park Jae-sang seemed annoyed to see his wife gone. He confronted her, then rummaged through her suitcase, looking for something while she screamed at him. Hyo-rin, scared, ran to In-hae's room to hide. When her mother arrived, she ran out and asked her questions, but her mother only gave a brief answer and left. It turned out that the mother went to her father's hospital room to eat fruit and watched the news about her husband, looking unhappy. The two girls continued to paint secretly. The next day, everything returned to normal. The lady and Park Jae-sang went back to filming their show to prepare for the election. When the lady spilled some wine on her dress, In-ju offered to change it for her, causing the lady to laugh. Meanwhile, Ha Jong-ho, owner of the Garden TV channel, went to Wonryong School to make a documentary about the blue orchid. The camera woman was In-kyung. He told them the origin and history of the orchid and then took them to the exhibition hall to introduce them to the general who had brought the orchid back. He also brought out a file, hoping they would make a great video. In-ju went shopping for beauty products with the lady, but when they got to the car, they realized they were being followed. They ran quickly to get a different taxi. The lady mentioned that her husband was controlling and didn't want her to be close to other men, which is why she was being followed. She then asked In-ju if she knew the address of Jin Hwa-young's house. They went there and looked around. The lady was heartbroken and cried over the loss of her friend. The two sisters talked for a long time, but the conversation centered around Hyo-rin's father. In-ju showed her the photo she took of the lady the previous night and offered to help if needed. That night, In-ju went home and told Choi Do-il about the day's events. He just smiled and said that Won Sang-ah wasn't who she thought she was. She was simply acting to gain In-ju's trust because Hwa-young was dead and she needed someone like In-ju to help her. While they were talking, In-kyung texted In-ju, asking her to come home and look at information about Choi Do-il. She had investigated his background and what he had done for her sister and advised her not to get involved with him. But In-ju was focused on making money and refused to listen to her sisters. Suddenly, she noticed a flower hanging on the dining table that looked exactly like the one she had seen at Hwa-young's house and at the scene of Director Shin's accident. Her sisters didn't believe her, saying the orchid was rare, but she pulled out a similar one, shocking them. The next day, In-kyung went to the television station and saw her aunt there, looking distraught. She greeted her casually, but the aunt left, so In-kyung went to the manager and told him about the blue orchid. She said she would reveal information about her senior, Megri, later. Just then, the management board called the manager and informed him that In Kyung was fired, which shocked her. Hyo-rin forgot her phone at home, so In-hae called her sister to get it and bring it to school. When she entered the room, she saw her phone under the bed and tried to reach for it. As she pulled out a painting Hyo-rin had made, she was horrified because it looked just like the scene she had witnessed at Hwa-yeom's house. She rushed to the school and asked Hyo-rin why she painted that scene, but she had no idea. In-ju kept asking, but Hyo-rin didn't answer, so In-ju told her that she had seen that scene at her sister's house, and it was exactly the same as the painting her sister had made. In-kyung thought her aunt had gone to the television station to pressure the director to fire her, so she went to confront her. But her aunt said she hadn't done anything. In-kyung went immediately to Park Jae-sang's press conference and asked him about his fraudulent real estate deals. The whole hall erupted. That evening, they couldn't find Hyo-rin in her room, so the two sisters went to look for her. They checked the security camera footage and discovered that she was in the garage. They went down and saw Hyo-rin watching a video from the black box of the car that day. In-ju took it and watched it. She noticed that the person who had visited Hwa-yeom's house that day was Hyo-rin's father. Upstairs, Hyo-rin explained everything in detail. On the 17th, her parents had fought, and her father left in her grandfather's car. Her mother left soon after. Hyo-rin was afraid they wouldn't come back, so she hurt herself. She wasn't sure why she painted that scene, but it kept appearing in her mind, and she had painted it even before Hwa-yeom died. She suddenly remembered that there was a secret orchid room in her friend's house. That type of orchid could induce hallucinations and was forbidden to grow. Remembering this, In-ju grabbed a pen and paper to draw it, but it didn't look right, so she ignored the orchid. Hyo-rin had retrieved the memory card from the black box and said that if In-ju took it, she would die. Meanwhile, Park Jae-sang was surrounded by reporters asking about the commotion earlier. The television station reported the incident and the aunt saw it. She called In-kyung, who was also surrounded by reporters. They demanded that she show them a copy of the real estate certificate. She showed it to them and left. Late that night, In-ju snuck into the room to find the memory card, but Hyo-rin caught her and scolded her. Upset, In-ju took a taxi to Jin Hwa-yeom's house, but she knew she was being followed. Looking out the window, she saw that it was department head Go. In-ju hid something and went downstairs. Go wanted to see what it was, so she grabbed it and it fell to the floor. It was a few goldfish. The two sisters buried the memory card near the roots of an orchid and talked. The next day, In-ju went to see Director Park and told him that her aunt wanted to meet him, but he refused. However, after seeing the photo, he agreed. The two of them sat down and talked for a while, and then the aunt got straight to the point. Her niece had done something wrong, and she wanted to negotiate a settlement. If he refused, she wouldn't hesitate to ruin Park Jae-sang. Choi Do-il learned that In-ju had been harassed by department head Go the day before and went to talk to her. She was impulsive, and she wanted to check the footage from the 17th when Hyo-rin's father went to Hwa-yeom's house. Do-il was calmer and said that even if the father had killed department head Jin, they couldn't do anything to him now. In-ju then showed Do-il the article her sister found about him. She suspected that he would get rid of her after they finished their business. But Do-il showed her that woman's social media account, and she was alive and well. The article was fake, and he would clear the names of his associates, so she shouldn't worry. He then invited her to go out with him later. Park Jae-sang, pressured by the aunt, held a press conference to admit to everything, and then presented evidence to clear his name, winning the support of the people there. In-ju and Choi Do-il watched the news about it. The aunt wasn't surprised and called In-ju to get In-kyung home immediately. While In-kyung was bombarded by reporters, her older sister arrived and took her home. But when they got home, they argued about the real estate issues. In-kyung, refusing to give up, left. She went to her office to look at the broadcast footage showing the real estate addresses, and she saw a very familiar one. She wanted to retrieve the documents, but they were gone. It turned out that the aunt had had someone destroy all the old documents. The wealthy family was happy to have resolved that stressful situation. Department head Go had a grudge against In-ju and kept mentioning her issues. One saying aunt defended her employee. Choi Do-il affirmed that he would continue to closely monitor the situation because that was his job. In-ju seemed to have earned some trust, and the lady asked her to go to Singapore with her next week to attend the International Orchid Association meeting. Talking to Sang-ah, she learned more about the business. After completing the work, she would receive a 10% commission and bonus. One Sang-ah gifted In-ju a blue orchid. She was told to keep it by her bedside before sleeping, and it would help her see what she wanted and achieve her dreams. The lady also told her that the International Orchid Association's abbreviation was Tin Lan Hoi, Orchid Essence Society. Meanwhile, In Kyung was putting together a picture that had been cut and discovered that the words Tin Lan Hoi were written on the back. In the secret orchid room, In Hai asked her friend to smell the blue orchid to see if it could help them find clues from the previous images. In-ju, taking a taxi home, was spotted by Choi Do-il with the blue orchid. He called to meet, but she refused. As she arrived at the door, Do-il followed and advised her not to keep the flower because it was dangerous. No matter what he said, In-ju wouldn't listen and walked away. That night, she took the orchid out and smelled it, falling into deep thought. In-ju went to see her aunt and also talked to her. Meanwhile, In-kyung had found a clue and called John-ho to continue investigating together. In-ju and the aunt talked about the 70 billion won. In-ju showed her information about the blue orchid and mentioned the Orchid Essence Society. Seeing that In-ju was sleepy and she was tired, the aunt decided to go to her room to rest. Choi Do-il was still outside, anxious about something. The blue orchid was now fully bloomed, and In-ju had a terrifying dream. She seemed to lose consciousness and wandered around the house, holding the orchid and moving towards a specific location. The two girls, Hae-rin and In-hai, also had a vague memory of a scene from their childhood. They were alone and walking towards a staircase. They both went to the staircase and were about to go up when one Sang-ah found them. In-kyung returned home and found the door open. She went to her aunt's room and was horrified by what she saw. Her sister was like a ghost, and her aunt was dead, cradled in In-ju's arms. The funeral was held, and one Sang-ah attended. Afterward, she went to talk to In-ju and revealed that she had known Mrs. Oh since childhood because she was a nurse in their family. In-ju told her that after smelling the orchid, she had a nightmare. She wanted to go to her aunt's room to check on her, but when she woke up, she was crying, and her aunt was dead in her arms. In-ju blamed Sang-ah for giving her the orchid, causing this tragedy. But the lady clarified that the flower was not related to Mrs. Oh's case. It was simply a symbol of their friendship. At the real estate company, no one wanted to accept the share of the profits because they were afraid of taking on the huge debt. Seeing this, In-kyung volunteered to take everything for herself. In-ju went to see Choi Do-il and asked him to find the killer of her aunt and Hwa-young. She didn't need money anymore and would give him all of hers if he just found the culprit. Do-il didn't want to argue, just comforted her and told her to follow the plan. He would take care of everything, and the profit share would stay the same. Back home, the two sisters talked for a while. In-kyung went to see the lawyer to retrieve Mrs. Oh's belongings, including a card that Mrs. Oh had overlooked. After receiving everything, she opened the room where she used to live and looked at old photos and the letter she had written to her aunt before leaving. She was feeling sad when In-ju called and told her to watch the news. The murderer had confessed. It turned out to be the housekeeper who worked there every day. The two sisters wondered about the blue orchid next to their aunt. John-ho arrived. He told them to rewatch the video of the murderer's confession and noticed that he was holding a blue orchid and saying goodbye. The three were shocked and began searching the house for something. John-ho noticed something different about the wall. After measuring and sketching, he found a gap. In-kyung explored the area and used the card she had received to unlock a secret room. The safe was gone, only a blue orchid remained. She picked it up, smelled it, and went out, saying she would reveal the truth herself. In-ju saw her sister like this and revealed the truth. She had 70 billion won in Singapore under her name. Once she got it back, she would give the ledger to Kyung to expose the truth. The two sisters sealed the deal. That evening, the three of them were watching Park's speech when In-kyung noticed it sounded familiar. She opened her laptop and realized it was the same speech the general gave during the war. She also discovered that her aunt was a soldier at the time. Meanwhile, the wealthy couple returned home and argued after a few sentences. Hyo-rin was scared and ran to In-hai's room. The two girls went to the staircase from their dream and found a storage room. They looked at the photos together, but some were missing. Hyo-rin also found a box she used to play with as a child. She opened it and saw that it looked like Hwa-young's house. In-ju and In-kyung created an investigation board about those who had participated in the war with the general. Almost all of them were dead, except for Hee-jae, who had disappeared. Jong-ho found out that after Hee-jae disappeared, his son inherited his assets. That son was Choi Do-il. The next day, the two sisters went to visit his mother in prison. They talked about the case and wanted her to help them expose the Orchid Essence Society. At first, she refused, but when she heard that her son, Choi Do-il, was also involved, she agreed and gave them an address. Park Jae-sang realized something was wrong with Choi Do-il and ordered department head Ko to follow him. That evening, In-ju met Do-il. She admitted that she had gone to see his mother and conveyed her answer, no. She gave him an address to investigate the answer. Choi Do-il asked her to stop all business dealings with him and to have no further contact. He also handed In-ju a USB drive and said he wouldn't be responsible for her safety anymore, then left. The next day, Do-il followed the address In-ju gave him, but he found someone following him. After a while, he managed to lose his tail and arrived at the address. There, Choi Do-il met a man. Jong-ho and In-kyung followed behind and recorded the meeting with their phones. In-ju was packing her bags, preparing to leave for Singapore, when she received a message from In-hae. She took a picture of a message Won Sang-ah sent her, saying that she was locked in her room, and that In-ju should come to Singapore as soon as possible because her husband was very dangerous. Once she arrived, she should have some cash ready, and Sang-ah would bring the two girls later. In-ju quickly went to school to find her sister and give her instructions. She gave her the things she needed, and In-hae gave her the memory card from the 17th, saying that today was In-ju's birthday. Meanwhile, In-kyung and Jong-ho pretended to be lost and asked Choi Hee-jae for directions. Seeing that he was hard to approach, In-kyung let his dog bite her. Once inside, Hee-jae bandaged her wound and Jong-ho, wearing glasses, walked around, looking at everything. They wanted to stay and talk, but Hee-jae chased them away, and In-kyung only left her business card, hoping he would cooperate and expose the Orchid Essence Society. Choi Do-il returned and met Park Jae-sang. He gave him his father's address. He knew that Park Jae-sang wanted to harm him, so he said, "I don't care, do whatever you want." A group of assassins went to Hee-jae's house, but he, being a former Special Forces soldier, knew there was danger and set a bomb before leaving. The assassins triggered it and were blown up. After seeing her younger sister, In-ju bought a new outfit and wore the shoes Hwa-young gave her, going to the restaurant where they had once eaten. She was eating happily alone when Choi Do-il arrived. He learned it was In-ju's birthday. He also gave her information that he had found at the Orchid Society in Singapore, a picture of someone claiming to be In-ju. Looking at the picture of the tattoo on her foot, In-ju recognized it as Jin Hwa-young. She was shocked. She had seen her die with her own eyes, so how could she be here? Choi Do-il would also go to Singapore to see what was going on. It turned out Do-il was with In-ju because Park Jae-sang wanted him to get rid of her before tomorrow night. If he didn't handle it quickly, he would also die. Won Sang-ah was locked in her room by her husband, who went to comfort her and used sweet words to appease her. In-kyung was still busy researching the war and the blue orchid. The old man revealed that the orchid had a kind of curse like a ghost. Suddenly, she received a call from her sister saying that she had to go to Singapore urgently and told In-kyung to be prepared to go with In-hae. Soon, In-ju and Do-il arrived in Singapore. He left her alone at a luxurious hotel and said he would go somewhere else and pick her up before the auction tomorrow. When she checked in, the staff recognized her as a VIP guest and called the manager to greet her. They would prepare a more luxurious room for her instead of a regular one. Meanwhile, after packing for their trip, Hyo-rin climbed a ladder to get into her mother's room. As soon as she heard her daughter, the mother said that she had made up with Hyo-rin's father and then whispered something in her daughter's ear. In-ju got her room and lay down to think for a while before falling asleep. In-kyung was about to use the bathroom when she heard noises downstairs. She looked down and saw someone examining her research. She went downstairs and discovered it was Choi Hee-jae. The two of them exchanged information about the current situation. It would be great if he could come as a witness. Hee-jae agreed to take In-kyung to his car. It was full of heavy weapons. He said he wanted to protect his son and was going to eliminate Park Jae-sang, but In-kyung stopped him. She wanted to expose everything and deliver a decisive blow, not just have Park pay for his actions. Hee-jae agreed but said that if things didn't go according to plan, he would do what he wanted. The next morning, In-ju went to the places in the photos that Hwa-young had taken. She and Choi Do-il went to the cafe and met the waiter. The black man wasn't surprised to recognize In-ju, which surprised them both. Wherever they went, people greeted her, which surprised her even more. They went to the apartment to check it out, but the password wouldn't work. The security guard saw them and came over to ask, but Do-il quickly made up an excuse and left. In the car, In-ju wondered why everyone recognized her, even though she had just arrived. She remembered Do-il saying that Jin Hwa-young had plastic surgery before she died. Could it be that she had the same surgery as In-ju? Do-il said that they had to go to the Orchid Society, so they would have to put that aside for now. Back at the hotel, he prepared a different outfit for her and bought earrings that matched the outfit. They then went to the orchid auction. Everyone looked at In-ju, making her feel a bit uncomfortable, but Do-il encouraged her to stay calm. As soon as they sat down, the auction began. The orchid this time was called the Thief Princess, and the starting price was $50,000. After intense bidding between In-ju and a secret caller, she won the orchid for $600,000. She went outside and chatted with some Western ladies for a while. One of them said she had just seen her in the bathroom and that she wasn't wearing that outfit but another one. Suspecting it was Hwa-young, In-ju rushed in to find her. She couldn't find her and was panicking, but Choi Do-il arrived in time. He advised her to calm down. Then, a staff member approached them and said that the mystery person had sent a message to In-ju. Do-il understood English and translated it. "Congratulations, you look like a real princess today." Hearing this, In-ju remembered her conversation with Director Woo and confirmed that the person was Hwa-young. Back in Korea, Park Jae-sang met and spoke with In-hai. He learned that Hyo-rin had snuck into her mother's room the previous night and knew about their plan to go to Singapore. He threatened that she wouldn't escape his grasp and informed her that his men were already in action. In-hai learned about it and called her older sister, telling In-ju to be careful because Park's people were also operating there. Back at In-ju's place, she and Do-il were in the car on their way back, discussing Hwa-young. Then, the two of them rushed to execute the plan to withdraw the 70 billion won. They went to 7 different banks to complete the withdrawal process. At this time, In-kyung messaged her sister asking what she was doing and informing her that Park Jae-sang had sent people to Singapore to take action. In-ju looked back at Choi Do-il with suspicion about something. As they continued to the next bank, In-ju questioned what they would do with all the money to believe him. Do-il reassured her and pulled out a gun, showing her how to use it and telling her to trust him. As they entered another bank, the female lead was bumped into by an old woman who quickly shoved a piece of paper into her hand. Looking out, she saw a woman in a yellow dress running away. Inside, In-ju took out the note and read it. It was true that her sister, Hwa-young, was still alive. She couldn't believe that In-ju had come all this way and urged her to escape immediately because Choi Do-il was very dangerous. In-hai, meanwhile, was checking the security camera footage from Park Jae-sang's room and discovered something that made her startle. On the other side, In-ju recalled the words on the note, and after Do-il received a call and was called inside by the manager, she ran out the back door to a car that was waiting for her. As soon as she got in and left, another car followed in pursuit. In-hai called In-kyung to inform her that her older sister was in danger. On the car, In-ju read the note again and learned that her fingerprint could unlock her apartment door. But suddenly, a truck came barreling towards them. At that moment, a white car appeared out of nowhere and blocked the direct impact, causing In-ju's car to experience a normal jolt. She fainted and was taken to the hospital. In her semi-conscious state, she saw her sister, Jin Hwa-young. Her sister urged In-ju to take the suitcase no matter what. After regaining consciousness, she only saw the black shoes Hwa-young had given her in the past. Choi Do-il received the news and rushed to the hospital. However, when he arrived at the hospital bed, In-ju was nowhere to be found. It turned out that she had taken the suitcase and returned to her apartment. She sat there in a daze until evening when Won Sang-ae returned, which shocked In-ju. It turned out that Won Sang-ae had been targeting her since her first interview at the company. After drinking the blue drink, In-ju felt very sleepy. It turned out that Sang-ae had given her a solution from the blue orchid. Losing consciousness gradually, In-ju wanted to see the 70 billion won one last time. The madam was very excited and ran out to fulfill her wish. However, when she opened the suitcase, it was filled with bricks. In-ju stood behind her and pointed the gun Do-il had given her at her, but after drinking that liquid, her body was nearly drained of strength, and she was quickly disarmed by Won Sang-ae's men. Just then, the security guard came up to report about the littering and opened the door. Do-il barged in and beat up the group, leaving them battered and bruised. Won Sang thought he had come to rescue In-ju, but that wasn't the case. He had come because her husband called him. It turned out that In-kyung had met with Park Jae-sang, demanding he release her sister, or she would expose all the evidence in the ledgers to the public. Hearing this, the madam could only leave helplessly. After a while of talking, Park tore up the ledgers and threw them into a fire in front of In-kyung. Meanwhile, In-ju had woken up. She told Do-il about the hiding place for the money at the train station and gave him the key to locker number 6. She was afraid she might die there, so she asked him to take care of her 2 younger sisters and leave them a share of the money. After saying that, In-ju fainted again. After leaving Park Jae-sang's place, In-kyung went to see the TV station manager to talk. She wanted to do something meaningful, but learned that he was also part of the Orchid Society and working for the tycoon. Hye-rin and In-hai, on the other side, were making plans to run away. The 2 children drew a beautiful pink picture and discussed where to run to after school the next day. In-kyung called her Jong-ho out to drink and talk. She didn't know what to do anymore. Her close friend suggested that she go to America with him. That was the place she wanted to go to study, and he didn't want her to investigate the Orchid Society anymore because it was very dangerous. Jong-ho also confessed his feelings to In-kyung, but no matter what he said, she refused to go and wanted to stay there to finish the work she had started. Back home, In-kyung called Choi Hee-jae to tell him that her plan had failed and to handle it himself. She also added that she would help him eliminate Park. After a good night's sleep, In-ju woke up. Choi Do-il told her about the rest of the plan. He had transferred the money into a shell company under Oh In-ju's name. Then, they would go to Greece to divide the assets 60-40 as agreed. He had prepared everything, so In-ju only needed to go there, settle in, and wait for her sisters to come. She was a little puzzled, wondering if they wouldn't see each other anymore. Do-il said directly that it would be better for her if he left like this. Won Sang Ed would find someone new to play with after this and wouldn't care who she was anymore. As for him, he had some trouble and couldn't disappear. Hyo-rin's mother had returned home, still acting like a good mother, buying gifts for her daughter. As they were talking, Park Jae-sang came home. The 2 children went to school, while the couple went to a corner to talk in an intimate way. The madam wanted her husband to eliminate In-kyung because she had insulted and humiliated her. As he was enjoying his newfound power, he ordered Chief Go to assassinate In-kyung. Soon, someone arrived to carry out the plan. In-ju and Choi Do-il were waiting for the plane to Greece when they received a call from Jong-ho. He said that he couldn't find In-kyung and that her house had been broken into. Even the parrot hadn't survived. In-ju immediately wanted to return to Korea to see how her sister was doing, but Do-il advised her to make a plan first and not rush back like that. Because she couldn't delay, In-ju decided to go back. If something happened to her, she asked him to give her share of the money to her sisters. At school, when Hyo-rin was practicing her role in the play, she couldn't find In-hai. She started having seizures from the stress. Back at home, Sang-hae asked her daughter about the savings books. She wondered if In-hai had stolen them and run away. Hyo-rin didn't want her friend to get caught, so she said that she had given them to In-hai to take to foreign countries to see museums. The little girl still thought her friend was abroad, but she didn't know that In-hai had been locked up in another room. When she woke up, In-hai recognized the surroundings, which were similar to the sealed box she had seen in the storage room before. Hyo-rin's mother came and admitted that she had kidnapped In-hai. In-ju returned to Korea and went to the scene. As soon as the police investigator mentioned the last location of her sister at the St. Benedict Psychiatric Hospital, she went there with Jong-ho. After reviewing the security camera footage from In-kyung's arrival, she was surprised to find that her sister was not in any trouble but had actually gone there herself. The hospital staff said she came for alcohol addiction treatment, but In-ju didn't believe it. At the same time, In-kyung had secretly escaped to the kitchen, opened the ventilation shaft, and reached director Won Sang-woo's room. It turned out that the night before, she had received an email from him mentioning that In-kyung was investigating him. She was curious about who he was, and the email responded that he was the son of General Won Jae-seon and the older brother of Won Sang-ae, currently confined to the psychiatric hospital. After discussing it with Choi Hee-jae, she studied the hospital's structure before deciding to go there. After squeezing through the ventilation shaft, In-kyung finally reached Won Sang-woo's room. After getting down, the two talked, as she wanted him to escape with her to become a witness. but since he was considered insane, no one would believe him. In Kyung assured him that she would help him. Outside, In-ju believed that her sister had come there for another purpose. She and Jong-ho were about to leave when they encountered Chief Go and his men. Suspecting that her sister was in Director Won's room, In-ju pressed the fire alarm button, creating chaos in the hospital. Seeing this, Chief Go went to the surveillance room to monitor the cameras and spotted In-kyung. He immediately sent people to capture In-ju. Taking advantage of the commotion, In-ju shouted down the hallway, informing her sister that someone was trying to harm her and to run. In-kyung and the director heard her. In-ju and Jong-ho ran to the rooftop. Seeing this, Chief Go decided to go up and capture In-kyung. As he opened the door to go out, he was immediately hit with a stick by In-ju. Thinking that she wouldn't be able to avenge herself for the previous day, she managed to get her revenge today. After beating him up for a while, the others broke down the door and rushed out, catching the two of them. They were about to deal with In-ju when someone came running to report that the patient in the VIP room had disappeared. There was nothing else they could do, so they asked to lock In-ju and Jong-ho up and chase after Director Won. Meanwhile, In-kyung and the director escaped through the water pipes. Choi Hee-jae had just arrived to pick them up. Kyung wanted to go back and save her sister, but Choi said that he had sent people there already, so she should be safe. At the hospital, Choi Do-il masked himself, threw a smoke bomb to rescue In-ju and Jong-ho, and then took them to a safe house. Seeing that In-kyung was safe, had Jong-ho rushed to hug her tightly. The group gathered in one place to discuss eliminating Park Jae-san. However, they couldn't agree because In-kyung wanted to expose him by releasing the news, as she had brought director Won Sang-woo with her. Hearing this, Choi left immediately. The two sisters then remembered their younger sister and immediately went to look for her. Chief Go returned to report to Park Jae saying that he had let In-kyung escape. Just then, Park received a call from director Won Sang-woo, who invited him to meet at an old bar. He said that he wouldn't participate with those people anymore and only needed money and his identity documents to leave. After setting the meeting place, Park Jae-sang arrived and waited. His men were causing chaos downstairs at the bar, while upstairs, Won Sang-woo pointed a gun at him. After subduing Park, Director Won took his phone and called Chief Go. He instructed him to transfer money to his account in Panama and prepare a plane ticket for him. Taking advantage of the situation, Park Jae-sang lunged for Won Sang-woo's gun. He planned to pull the trigger and end his brother-in-law's life, but the gun was actually empty. He then went out and picked up a large rock nearby to finish Won Sang-woo off. Back home, his wife gave him sleeping pills and told him that everything would be fine when he woke up in the morning. In-ju and Choi Do-il went to the mansion to look for their younger sister. She went to Hyo-rin's room and learned that In-hai had been kidnapped by her mother, not taken abroad. Suddenly, they'd heard a noise and looked out the window to see Sang-e heading somewhere. It turned out that she went to wake up In-hai and told her not to sleep anymore. The little girl thought she was going to be killed, so she begged her to keep it a secret from her two sisters and Hyo-rin. To her surprise, Sang-e came not to eliminate In-hai, but to have a conversation with her, after which she threw her a drawing and told her to finish it as soon as possible. In-hai immediately started drawing, but her sister found the room and came to rescue her. Seeing the familiar surroundings, In-ju took pictures. Choi Do-il urged them to leave quickly. Meanwhile, Choi and In-kyung discovered that Director Won was missing, along with a pistol. The next day, Park Jae-sang returned to his usual self. He asked Chief Go about Choi Do-il's mother and demanded she be brought out of the hospital. Won Sang-e couldn't find her daughter and searched everywhere. The maid said that In-ju was waiting, so she calmed down and went to meet her. To her surprise, In-ju had returned. In-ju handed her a letter left by Hyo-rin. It turned out that the little girl had left voluntarily and that she and In-hai had already gone through the paperwork to go to Japan. Hyo-rin said that she would work hard to become a talented artist and asked her mother to rest assured. Since everything had gone this far, Sang-e couldn't stop it anymore, so she declared a truce with In-ju. She asked In-ju one question. "Are you trusting Choi Do-il?" Back home, In-ju asked In-kyung to stop the investigation and go abroad with her. But her younger sister insisted that as long as In-hai was happy, she didn't care what happened to her. Respecting her sister's decision, In-ju said nothing more. Suddenly, In-kyung saw some news and burst into tears. As for Choi Do-il, He and his father were working on their plan when they received a call from the hospital saying that his mother was in danger and needed a signed release form for surgery. When he arrived to see his mother, Park Jae-sang was also there. After a conversation, Do-il decided to confess his father's entire plan in exchange for his and his mother's safety. He then went to give In-ju the transfer documents to sign. The text was all in English, so she didn't understand it. But Jong-ho and In-kyung checked it and took a picture. Choi Do-il's watch had a listening device on it. He also revealed the locations where his father had prepared the weapons for the upcoming assassination attempt. So, Park Jae-sang sent people to dismantle them at the 3 locations. He also asked his uncle to buy the ammunition and weapons Choi had been collecting for 20 years. He left cheerfully, unaware that a bomb had been planted in his car. As soon as he reached the exchange location, the car exploded, engulfing Choi in flames and leaving him severely injured. He was rushed to the hospital. In-ju tried to contact Do-il but couldn't get through, only getting a busy signal. Meanwhile, Do-il was on a plane with his mother. Park Jae-sang thought everything was going smoothly and was confident about his upcoming broadcast. Upon arriving at the television station, he discovered In-kyung as the anchorwoman, with Choi Do-il's mother also seated in the audience. Due to a recent tongue surgery, In-kyung spoke on her behalf. She presented evidence to prove that the case from 20 years ago wasn't committed by Do-il's mother, but by Park Jae-sang's father. Choi Do-il's mother wrote on a piece of paper, "I'm not the first, nor the last, they have used. This case is just the beginning." At the hospital, Do-il quickly arrived to take his father and In-ju away. In the car, In-ju had some questions, and Do-il explained that he had been in a hurry and hadn't had time to discuss things thoroughly. But luckily, In-ju was able to carry out her tasks according to the plan. As they were driving, the police suddenly appeared. They accused Choi of using illegal weapons and arrested him. At the end of the interview, In-kyung confronted Park Jae-sang. The two of them argued fiercely, neither willing to yield. The next day, the news of Choi Hee-jae's arrest for illegal weapon possession was announced, making Park overjoyed. That evening, he was to give a speech in preparation for taking office as mayor. Park Jae-sang confidently announced that the recent events were orchestrated by someone trying to oppose him. Suddenly, a video appeared on the big screen showing him with Won Sang-woo with a gun pointed at him. Chief Go immediately demanded the screen be turned off, and Park tried to explain himself. However, part 2 of the video showed him hitting the director with a large rock, leaving Park speechless. It turned out that Choi Do-il was controlling everything remotely. After cutting off the power, the news broadcast featuring In-kyung appeared, and she showed similar images on the large screen. The next day, a party held a press conference, claiming that the video was AI-generated and fabricated and that they would investigate it. Despite the controversy, Park Jae-sang was still elected mayor of Seoul, but he wasn't very happy. The next day, while In-kyung was continuing her interview, an urgent report was announced. The video sent showed Park Jae-sang jumping from a high building. Everyone wondered if his death was due to the video In-kyung had released, leaving her bewildered and speechless. At the morgue, Won sang a bid farewell to her husband, holding a blue orchid in her hand. When she went outside, she called In-ju and said that she had told her to leave, but she wouldn't listen. She would let In-ju know what a festival was. After receiving the call, In-ju checked her bank balance and called Choi Do-il but got a busy signal. When she tried again, her money had vanished, leaving her bewildered. Loud pounding sounds came from outside, terrifying In-ju. While eating an apple with his wife in the old man's hospital room, he noticed a blue orchid already placed there. Knowing he could only leave now, he took the flower and went to the rooftop. After smelling it, he simply walked down. Back in the present, the housekeeper said that In-hai had sent a package. Sang-ae opened it and found the drawing she had asked In-hai to do. Seeing it, the madam could only weep. Chief Go also went to see Won Sang-ae and announced he would now work for her. After receiving her approval, she wanted to eliminate the O sisters herself, but Sang-ae stopped her, telling her to be patient. Meanwhile, the police arrived at In-ju's house. She frantically called her sister, but the police still arrested her. The next day, Choi Do-il and his mother went to the airport but met with an accident. In-kyung went to see her sister to talk. She informed her that Do-il had been in an accident but couldn't find the hospital where he was admitted. In-ju wanted to know if Choi Do-il was still alive, so she asked her sister to find out. After her husband's funeral, Sang-ae stayed with reporter Mary and Chief Go. She started a new plan and would promote Mary to become a broadcaster if she cooperated in this matter. In prison, the lawyer spoke to Inju about the 20-year sentence she would face. After hearing her explain about receiving the money, the lawyer concluded that she would be imprisoned for 7 years. The trial quickly began, and evidence related to Inju's charges was presented, leaving her with no choice but to admit that they were true. Inju wanted Choi Do-eul to testify for her, but the lawyer said he would be a witness for the prosecution in the next trial, shocking her. In Kyung returned home and investigated further to clear her sister's name. She remembered meeting Hwa Young before and went to talk to Inju. Her older sister wanted to bring Won Sang-ae to prison with her, so she asked In Kyung to investigate Hwa Young's death. She was sure Won Sang-ae was involved because the sealed room was very similar to what Inju had seen. After returning home to investigate, In Kyung went to see Jin Hwa Young's father and asked him about it, but he refused to answer. Meanwhile, Won Sang-ae went to see her teacher and asked him to deal with reporter In Kyung. The teacher was hesitant, but after she lured him into the Orchid Society and offered him a position of power, he'd happily agreed. In Kyung confronted her senior, Mary, but got nowhere. Just as she was about to leave, a black car arrived and kidnapped her. The next day, Won Sang-ae went to Inju's cell to speak with her. She took out lipstick and In Kyung's notebook and showed them to her older sister. She then continued to provoke Inju with her words, causing her to go crazy and smash her chair against the door. Before leaving, she couldn't help but taunt Inju, saying she would let her stay in prison for 20 years. Jong-ho, unable to find In Kyung, went to the police for help. In Kyung, meanwhile, was tied up in front of Jang Seo-pyeon. The next trial took place, and Choi Do-il was called to testify. Won Sang-ae was pleased that his testimony was favorable to her until Inju's lawyer arrived and changed the situation completely. Do-il confessed that he had used the 70 billion won to transfer it to another shell company owned by Sang-ae. He also presented a USB drive containing evidence of his actions. Do-il didn't hesitate to face the legal consequences, while Won Sang-ae could only cry in her heart. After exiting the courtroom, she was bombarded by reporters. Inju was taken to a private room to speak with her lawyer. He had a phone call and left, allowing Choi Do-eul to enter and speak with her. She questioned why he did this, but Do-il simply apologized. He said that he had called her, but her phone was off. Remembering that she had been startled by an unknown number and had turned her phone off, Inju realized. Their time was up, so he was escorted out. At the same time, the police came to arrest Choi Do-il. That night, In Kyung surprised everyone by appearing on the news. She presented specific evidence of Won Sang-ae's actions in eliminating others, from the wool coat to the secret sealed room, and the blue orchids present at each crime scene. Uncle Jang Seo-pyeon also appeared on the program to talk about the effects of this flower and presented photographic evidence of the large orchid plant in the madam's house. It turned out that during a critical moment, the two of them had communicated and understood each other's intentions, leading them to work together to condemn Won Sang-ae. After watching this, Won Sang-ae could only sit in silence. The next trial took place, and this time, Inju poured out her heart to the judge. Just at the peak of the trial, Jin Hwa Young opened the door and walked in. Her arrival shocked everyone, including Sang-ae and Inju, who couldn't believe their eyes. As soon as she arrived, Hwa Young stood up to be a witness in the case. After Chief Jin's explanations to the judge, Inju was declared not guilty. However, because she used the 2 billion won from the secret vault, she would be given a suspended sentence for 2 years. As soon as she returned home, she found Hwa Young waiting for her. Jin Hwa Young apologized, but Inju was furious and confronted her sister. However, after listening to what Hwa Young had gone through and how she had helped Inju, she calmed down. Choi Do-il called, asking Inju to go to the Netherlands because he had found In Hai's whereabouts. If they didn't act quickly before Won Sang-ae, something bad might happen. Hwa Young left without a trace. It turned out that she had gone to the press conference to expose the embezzlement at the construction company. Chief Jin released a video of Won Sang-ae eliminating others and creating false evidence to fool everyone. Hwa Young also sent everyone an app called Accountant from the Future. In this app, people could access black fund copies from the ledgers, proving Sang-ae and her family's embezzlement over the past 20 years. This app was quickly downloaded by millions as soon as it was released. After seeing this, Won Sang-ae didn't know if she could survive the storm. She went to a secret room and distilled blue orchid water into a vial. Then, she went to see her teacher, Jang, to talk in his father's hospital room. Sang-a remained optimistic in front of her teacher, even though Jang Se-pyeon had betrayed her. At that moment, the heart monitor beeped. He quickly went with the nurse to check. Taking advantage of the situation, Sang-a took a syringe containing blue orchid solution and injected it directly into the old man's neck. The nurse was shocked and threatened, so she ran away immediately. Thinking that he had died, she was about to leave, but she tripped and fell. As he spoke his last words, Jang Se-pyeon died. Chief Go just ran in, saying that he would handle it as a private matter, but the madam said no. She wanted him hanged in a place where everyone could see so that everyone would know she had eliminated him. In-ju and Choi Do-il boarded a plane to Greece. Suddenly, In-ju received a text message, turned on airplane mode, and said she needed to go to the bathroom. After waiting for a while and not seeing In-ju return, Do-il went to look for her. It turned out that Sang-a had kidnapped Hwa-young and sent a text message to In-ju. Meanwhile, In-kyun and Jong-ho went to the school to look for teacher Jang and discovered that he was dead. Sang-a's people attacked and kidnapped Kyun. Jong-ho managed to escape. As he was running away, he called In-ju, but it was Choi Do-il who answered. In-ju secretly took something from a cabinet and put it in her pocket. She then quickly ran to the secret room where Sang-a was holding Hwa-young captive. In-ju took out the grenade that Choi Hee-jae had given her as a gift. He had taught her how to use it. Today, In-ju would use it to settle the score. There were two options. Either all three of them die or all three of them live. Sang-a laughed triumphantly, saying that she wouldn't die because she had replaced the entire water sprinkler system with high concentration acid. In-ju listened and then mentioned that she had seen the video and noticed that Sang-a's symptoms were very similar to Hyo-rin's. The mother who died that year was actually killed by Sang-a. The madam still refused to admit it and blamed everything on her own mother. After a while of arguing, Sang-a continued to threaten In-ju with more surprises. Outside, the car carrying In-kyun was nearing her home when Choi Do-il arrived in time to stop it. He got out of the car and took care of the thugs. Chief Go didn't escape either. Jong-ho arrived and ran to carry In-kyun away. Seeing the situation outside, Sang-a turned on the switch to start the acid spraying and hid in a corner, laughing. Hearing her sister scream in pain, In-ju used the grenade to destroy the drainpipe and took it to rescue Hwa-young. She had just taken Chief Jin to safety when Sang-a lunged at her, trying to harm her. In-ju used all her strength to fight back and accidentally pushed her into the pool of acid. The blue orchid plant gradually withered due to the high concentration of acid. The next day, the media reported that Sang-a had died at home under unclear circumstances. In-kyun was given a memoir of Jae-seon by a little girl,